Hi, I'm Robin Forster with Feel So Alive, and welcome, especially if you're a first-time viewer and or if you're watching it on the replay or live. I'll be looking down a little bit because I'm going to look at my notes because I don't want to miss anything. So just to give you an idea of what's going on. And let's see, so why did I start this program? A lot of people are kind of curious about that. And I started it because I found that it was really hard as a small business person and also as someone who's interested in health and wellness to get the information that I needed quickly, easily, in little bite-sized pieces. So I thought if that's an issue for me, I bet it is for other people also. And so I started this program. And let's talk about the run of the program and how this works. So I pull in our first guest, who is a healer, and their interview is usually about 10 to 12 minutes roughly. And then we have a little health tip because it's brought to you by Feel So Alive and Feel So Alive Informed. And then our second guest is about 10 minutes, and then that's it. So let's go ahead and get going. Okay, but first, before we get started, the world is in such a strange way right now, we all know, that it just seems to me to be a really good idea to just spend 30 seconds, I've got my timer, and to just kind of give back a little bit of energy. And whether it's a prayer for you or a blessing or sending white light, whatever that is, or just a moment of silence. Let's see if we can't give a little bit of juice back to the world, to everyone who's living in it, and also to the earth, since there's a lot of struggling going on. I'm going to go ahead and set the timer. Thank you for joining me doing that. Okay, let's talk about our guest today. And our healer is Amy Kubanek. Hope I said that right. I was practicing. We just had so much fun, and I was learning so much from her when we did part one that we had to do part two. And so that's what today is continuing. And our healer today, and then Yvonne Marchese, she is a blogger, and her blog is or a podcaster, excuse me. It's about late bloomers, and I went, oh, that would be me. How awesome! So let's go ahead and get started with Amy. Hi, I'm Robin Forster, and this is a little unusual. Today we are doing part two because Amy and I have been talking, and you'll have to go back and look at part one to find out about her and her body work and all her experience, and she's taken all of that to another level. And so we were talking, and it's like, oh, Amy, you have to share. And so what she's going to talk to us about first is about our lymph system. And I'm in health and wellness, and so when Amy was talking about detoxing the body, that's something that I share with people also, and never even thought about the lymph system. Mm-hmm. So I am very excited. So Amy, now you're going to tell us about it and show us a little bit, just real quick, what we can do at home, right?
Sure, yeah. I'll be as concise as I can be. Our lymphatic system, as you mentioned, is our natural detoxification system. It's a it's a pressurized fluid system in our body that also runs congruent with our blood and with our nerves. And it so the blood has the heart that pumps and pumps the blood. Our lymphatic system doesn't have that same mechanism. So what actually gets it moving is movement of our body.
Oh, so sitting all day doesn't work out well for moving the lymph system, right?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
So, but the good news is that there's very simple ways that you can stimulate your lymph to get moving again.
Okay, I'm ready for show and tell because I'm just fascinated by this.
So, of course, you can go into great detail. And, if you were to get a full lymphatic drainage massage, that could go on for a couple of hours. But what we're going to do today, or I'll give you an idea of, is a 2-minute process that you do on yourself. And you can do it a few times a day if you like. It's quite easy and simple. So it goes with, there's 6 spots in the body, which I'll show you really quickly. And the moves on it really is just to kind of massage so that you move the skin a little bit. It's not a deep massage. It's more just about kind of getting some movement in that area. And it's actually fairly quick. So it's like closer to vibration than a deep pushing kind of touch, right? And then tapping it. Same thing, it's quite quick. And that you would do this on both sides. You're always going right, left. And so that,
Not doing two at once, but doing one and then moving to the other side.
you could do both at once, but it's kind of easier just to focus on
One at a time.
one at a time.
Okay. Especially this day and age. There's so much going on. When you said 2 minutes, it was like, yes, I can do
Yeah.
something for 2 minutes. That works.
Good. That.
Okay, so we've done kind of the neck collarbone area. Okay, so what's
That's
next?
right. So I'll just walk you through the other ones and really quickly. So the other ones behind, like underneath your ear, right behind where your jaw is. So this is also one of the big centers, like the biggest spots for the vagus nerve. Then there's the shoulder, in front of the shoulder here. This would be number 3. Number 4 is down halfway between the rib cage and the belly button. And there's this spot, and this one actually is quite deep, and it can be quite uncomfortable for many people at first. The next point is down at the hips, where the legs meet your pelvis, and then behind the knees. So we'd be doing the same thing of rubbing fairly quickly and then tapping.
So it's almost like a friction rubbing, right?
Yeah.
So it's like if your hands are cold, that kind of a rubbing. That's okay.
Similar. Yeah. So doing so is going to get some stimulation moving, and then after that should only take you about a minute to do. After that, you bounce for about a minute.
Oh. Okay, now why bounce?
Well, bouncing gets especially right in the guts. There's a lot of lymph in our abdominal area, so it kind of massages that part of our body and gets it moving. And nothing works as good as bouncing.
Huh. Okay, this is fascinating because I am at my desk 80% of the time, and I am sitting, and I know I need to move more. And you and I have talked a little bit about me having trigeminal neuralgia and kind of nerve issues, and that's what brought up this lymph discussion. And I've been looking for ways I can increase more movement that is quick and easy, that I don't have to go someplace, I have to do something, I have to close, all those things. I can just, so I'm thinking I could just do this twice a day at my desk, and awesome.
I'm gonna contact you in a couple of weeks and
Good. Okay.
see what you notice after a couple of weeks of doing that. What you experience.
Oh, what fun. Okay. Okay, and then you were all telling me that you have a group going on, and I'd be interested in that. So we just want to take a few minutes to share with that, and then I think you have a freebie that you wanted to tell us about too, right?
I do. So first off, I've developed a group program that is online, and it's for a small cohort of people, and it's called a compassionate practice. And what we do is we take the time to acknowledge all of the feelings that are inside of your body, and then to move them. So this is not about exercise. It's a program that is really more about the the intention behind movement, knowing that every movement starts with a feeling.
You know, when you started talking, we were chatting about this before we were recording, and
Yeah.
you were talking about behind every movement is a feeling. And it's good to hear it again because the first time I heard it was like, okay, I can wrap my head around this. I'm sure that that's a possible thing to do, but it's so different. And then we started chatting a little bit about me grabbing my water to drink my water. And for me, it was just so silly because it's like, it's a 10-minute interview. I'm sure I could not drink water for 10 minutes. And then what's the feeling behind that? And I'm just thinking for those folks who were smokers, like a lot of people in the world used to, I'm an ex-smoker, but I'm noticing that I still have some of that. What do I, because I'm real kinesthetic, what do I do with my hands, my fingers? And I think me, and you know, help me with this, flesh it out, but I think me grabbing my water has a lot more to do with I'm idle. So normally I would, not normally, in the past I would smoke, which is not a thing I want to do anymore. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know I'm not the only ex-smoker in the world.
Well, I so every I don't know if you've ever followed the work of Dr. Yvonne Marchese, but he works a lot with addiction, and he's also Vancouver based, which is where I am, and worked in one of the poorest neighborhoods of North America here with addiction, and has made a link between experiencing trauma and addiction. And so it's more a, it's not so much the drug itself, it's more a coping mechanism that the body needs, right? Because before we were talking about how, trauma lives in the body until we deal with it, and it's just stored there until you, right? So if you, yeah, with that accumulation of sensation and feeling that again we tend to numb out, um, although some people also become hypersensitive. That's another expression of that, um, is that we rely on this other thing to help give us comfort. So it all comes back to kind of bringing comfort to yourself and bringing more, which to me is about bringing compassion. And so I developed this compassionate practice because I see the such value in not judging what it is that we need, but instead being able to acknowledge the feelings, the complex feelings, and the many feelings that we have about who we are and what we're experiencing. And then to be able to move from that place.
Wow. That's, I mean, I know this is your work, so you're immersed in it and you've created it, and so you've traveled along that path.
Yeah.
And for those of us who are just starting to get our heads wrapped around this, it's like, oh wow. Okay, so since there's more to learn and more to do and all that, why don't you tell us a little bit about the freebie that you've got cooking up for folks? Because that just sounds like it's going to be awesome.
Thank you. I'm developing a 5-day practice for people to tune into their body for a few minutes each day in a slightly different way. So this is a really gentle, easy entry into this whole world of greater connection with your own body.
Wow. Okay, I'm excited about that coming out. And you were saying where people can go so they can see these programs and stuff. Where what the link is?
Go to my website. It's amykubanek.com. Kubanek.
Excellent. And then the people that you referred to, I will make sure that those get into the show notes with the links. So for those of us who didn't get the spelling right the first time, we don't need to worry about that. So, Amy, thank you. This has just been amazing. I'm just awed and very appreciative of your time.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure for me too.
Oh, super. Okay. Wasn't that amazing hearing from Amy and the things that she does? And what I didn't get a chance to share, so I apologize, that was me, is that she talks about how she lives and works and plays on the traditional ancestral unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, in which is now known as Vancouver, BC. She believes that it's important to navigate a better relationship with the land and also its original protectors. And I thought that that was really super. And it looks like Karen is watching us. Hi, Karen. If you want to make a comment at any point, I may or may not be able to pull it up on the screen so that I can share, but it's good to see you. And so moving on from Amy, and that was part 2. You can go back to January 28th and look at part 1. She's amazing, and the things that she's doing are incredible. But what I wanted to share now was, let's see. Okay, this program is brought to you by Feel So Alive, and I use Shackley products and have for over 40 years. And I don't know about you, but with spring and summer coming up, I have been thinking about getting ready for kayaking and biking and open water swimming, which means the question is, am I comfortable in my own skin? And especially after the winter that we've had. And I know a lot of people are saying not so much. So I thought it was kind of exciting to look at what Betsy had done as part of a reset to kind of gain back control over her body, her life, her being able to move. Because to me, it's all about clarity and what is it that we want. And oh, Karen, good question. How to go back to January 28th? Thank you for asking that. The easiest way, I think, at this point is to go to our Feel So Alive Facebook page, and I'm guessing that that's where you're watching from. And it should be 1 or 2 videos down. If not, just message me, and I'm more than happy to give you a link. And it might be on YouTube. It's been kind of a learning experience for me and YouTube and Restream and Ecamm Live. But so do get in touch with me if you don't see it there. And good question. Thank you for asking that. So thinking about what it is that we want with summer coming up, and I'm thinking kayaking and biking, I'm thinking shorts and tank tops and open water swim. And so I just got really clear that being a woman of a certain age, flexibility is even more important, and it's not something that I can just assume. So exercising, dropping some of the winter pounds, and getting ready to be able to play is the outcome that I want, because I want to be in joy outside and also super healthy. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to contact me. You can message me on Facebook, you can email me, and I'm happy to set up a discovery call so we can just chat and see if this reset is something that might be of interest to you and might fit with your life. And so next guest, and this is just really fun. Yvonne is the host of the Late Bloomer Living podcast, and I think I called it a blogger. Sorry about that, Yvonne. She has been a professional photographer, a mom, a wife, and she is a serial pivoter. She's originally from Texas, and she moved to New York City where she worked as an actress. She's on a mission to redefine society's ideas on aging and how to live a life by design. Oh, and this is where I called her a blogger instead. And so I apologize, because you're doing podcasts and they are amazing. So for those of us who are of a certain age, let me go ahead and bring her on. Hi, I'm Robin Forster with Feel So Alive and Feel So Alive Informed. And I have a special guest today that we are chatting with. And this is my friend Yvonne Marchese. Yvonne, you want to give a wave to everyone?
Hello.
Awesome, thanks. And what we're talking about, Yvonne has done a pivot, and I'm excited because we're kind of close to the same seasons of life. I'm a little older, but anyway, and so she's done some really exciting pivots, and I'm going to let you go ahead and tell everyone about it. So, the first question I have for you, and I'm looking down because I'm reading the questions, if you would tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. I'm a photographer by trade at this point in my life. I started photography as a business when I was 40. And that was one of my first big pivots. And this year, I can now call myself a podcast host. I have a podcast called the Late Bloomer Living Podcast, which focuses on midlife reinvention. Um,
I love that name. That's why I'm giggling, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's like
no, that's
the
great.
title's fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you. I am a late bloomer and so what I do on the podcast is I have guests on to talk about their own midlife reinventions that in some way, shape, or form they have done some sort of a pivot and we talk about what led them to it and how they managed to get through it. And the whole idea is to give a little bit of inspiration to people in midlife who may be feeling a little bit stuck um, and not know what they want, or maybe they know what they want and they're not quite ready to go for it yet. And just a little juice for people.
Well, I think before we decided to record, when you and I were just kind of chatting and catching up, I think that you mentioned that this was a passion project for you, that was not something that was on your list or the horizon.
No, it was something that it was an idea that came to me about the time it was an idea kicking around in my head for at least a year, maybe 2 years. When I was 48, I changed my diet. I was not feeling great. My 40s were tough physically, health wise, emotionally. A lot of stuff was going on for me. And I made some changes to my diet and my habits, and I started doing meditation and yoga, and I started feeling really good. And I've started feeling so good. I really started looking at the next 30 years of my life, thinking, wow, what else could I possibly do in the next 30 years? And I really started to get excited about it. And that's when the idea for the podcast came to me because I thought there must be other people out there who feel the way I do, who are feeling stuck and don't know where to go from here. And so I kind of approached the podcast not as an expert, but as somebody who's on a journey and kind of just want to bring my people along with me and say, hey, let's explore what this is. Let's rethink age and what it means.
Exactly. Yeah, I so agree. And for me, because I'm kind of talking about the same population, it's about being able to play outside. So being healthy enough physically to be able to
Yes.
still take walks, ride bikes, kayak. And I like what you're saying about yoga and meditation, changing your life. And it was okay. You survived making changes,
Hmm.
and it turned out they were good for you.
Best thing I ever could have done. I have never been a morning person, but I developed a morning routine. I just did a lot of self-helpy kind of stuff. I started off with Mel Robbins' 5 second rule, which led me to a bunch of other stuff. And then I was listening to podcast after podcast, really looking for what I could do to change things up because what I was doing wasn't working. And so I started getting up every morning, and it's the first. I was kind of dabbling in meditation up to then, and I would try to do yoga maybe 3 times a week, and then 2 weeks off, and there was no consistency. And once I really dedicated to 30 days, I just said, okay, 30 days, you can do this. That's what turned it into a new habit for me and was just a game changer.
Nice. Wow. 'Cause I'm thinking about meditation in my life, and we're at the dabbling stage. So that's good to hear that the whole thing about deciding that you're going to do something and then making it into a habit, that you're doing it. I was just reviewing James Clear, who talks about habit stacking,
Mm-hmm.
which is wonderful. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Google it, because habit stacking is just a deal maker when it comes to adding in something new that you're having problems adding to. So tell us about some of the benefits, if you've been hearing back from people about doing the podcast, and some of the tips that you have learned from the people that you have been interviewing.
Oh my gosh, I've had some amazing people on the podcast. They're so inspirational, and I'll occasionally get a little email from somebody, and it just makes my day to have them say, "I loved this episode, and this is just what I needed right now." And uh, on the flip side of this is interesting. I got on the phone with a friend who said, "I'm not listening to your podcast. I have to confess." And I said, "Well, that's okay. You don't have to listen to my podcast, honey." And he was like, it makes me feel bad because I feel they're so amazing. And I'm just not. And and another person mentioned that to me too. And I realized that we all play this comparison game, and and it's so not the point of the podcast. The point of the podcast is that we all feel less than, and we all feel unready to do things, and these are all people who have experienced that as well, and in some way pushed through it, and made it through to the other side. But it's funny how we compare ourselves and make ourselves feel bad.
It's all the whole mindset, and it's incredible what we do to ourselves. And I think that's why I was so looking forward to having you come on and us being able to chat, because oh, excuse me, time for a water break. um, because with you pivoting and pivoting so many times, because I remember talking to you when you were trying to figure out, this was just at the beginning of the lockdown, and trying to figure out how to do photography when no one can be anywhere near anyone else.
Right, which actually turned out to be a blessing for me. The COVID shutdown meant I couldn't go do photography the way I normally do. And what it did was open up my schedule and gave me the time to figure out how to do a podcast. I had no clue how to produce a podcast, and I didn't have a budget to have somebody help me do it. So I literally had to figure it all out. And I just did
Wow.
my full work day. I just turned it around and made it about learning how to do this thing, you know?
Wow. Yeah, I'm a DIY person also, so I really appreciate that. But deep diving into a whole new arena. I mean, that's a lot.
It was a lot. It was a lot. I'm not gonna lie. Like figuring out the tech for me, you're so good with tech, but for me, figuring out the tech was a deal, especially because I had to design my own website. That was a real process. And really what I learned this year is just to ask for help. Like, I have a friend who's really good with tech, and he would get on the phone with me every week, and I would just talk to him about where I was in the process with things. And he didn't do it for me, but it just having somebody to talk to
Yes.
helped get me out of my own head and over the hump, so that I could make a to-do list of like, okay, this is what I'm going to tackle. This is what's next.
Yeah, I agree, because we can be in our own heads so much, and trying to figure stuff out. But I found that with my website, I have a friend who's a graphic artist who's helping me, and it was like, I know what to do next, but I don't know what to do next. And so she was saying, okay, you need to load your theme on, decide which one you want to use, and let's get
Mhm.
that loaded on. And so I did. And then she said, okay, great, I've looked at the back end, that's good. Okay, now let's go through and figure out what graphics you want where. And it's so simple and so clear, but for me it was like, oh, well, I'm just going to add another plug-in because they're cool. You know, that's not the right next step. But so you've been sharing with us some of the things that you've been learning, you know, the DIY of doing your own website, learning the tech, and we were talking about your microphone before we got started. And do you mind sharing with people how that came into your world?
How the mic came into my world. So my husband, well, so first of all, back before I was a podcaster, back before I was a photographer, I was an actress. And my husband and I met on tour. We toured
Oh,
the United States doing basically the Miracle Worker, a theater for young audiences. And so anyway, my husband is also an actor. He still does that, and he teaches theater, and he what was I going to say? He also does some voiceover work. So this is I benefited from him having a really good mic to use for his voiceover work. I got to co-opt it and use it for the podcast.
oh, neat. Oh, I love that story. I think it's great. And I'm watching the time, and I appreciate you giving us this time so that we could chat and share with everyone. Um, and I'm also wondering, you were talking about you're working on a course that's going to be coming out. And if you have any other tips or things that you want to share to those of us who are not 25 anymore, and in a different season of our lives in the last minute or two here.
Yes. I think probably the best thing I could do is to talk about reframing your your thoughts, your constant thoughts. And the first step to that is becoming aware of them. Several years ago, I tried to give up complaining for Lent. And what that did was show me how much I complain. Even if I'm not doing it out loud, I'm doing it in my head, and it's an onslaught. And so a little trick that you can do just for awareness, and this is like a game. This is not something where you beat yourself up. This is like try to give up complaining for, let's say, 30 days. Maybe put a little rubber band or a bracelet on your wrist. And every time you notice yourself complaining, either out loud or in your head or even in your own head, just notice the complaint, take that thing and switch it over to your next wrist. And see how much you're doing that. And then you'll start to notice some patterns. And you've really got to be kind to yourself, because you're going to notice a lot of complaints once you start to notice this. And then the next trick to getting past that is reframing those. One of my common complaints is I don't have time. So, and that's regarding wanting to do something that I really want to do, like the podcast. I kept telling myself I don't have time to do that. Then you could reframe that into, how can I make time for that? You could reframe saying I have to do something, and you could say instead, I get to do this. I get to do this thing. Another thing I'll tell myself when I'm not feeling my best, kind of feel maybe a little cold coming on, something like that. I'll tell myself my body's working miracles. My body's working miracles. And these are just little things that I do to kind of keep the ball rolling, and to change. We just all have these constant thoughts that we're telling ourselves things, and they get in our way. And if you can take the time to first be aware of them, then you have a choice. You can notice, okay, now I'm aware of that thought. Is it serving me? Is that helping me in some way? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And if it isn't, then maybe you have a choice of reframing it. The trick with reframing is you've really got to believe your reframe. You've got to pick something to tell yourself that you can actually buy into.
Or maybe practice, because for some of us of a certain age, making a change after all these years,
Yes.
even if it's not a big change, it's still a scary change.
Yes,
So
and
I
it's
I
a
like
well-worn
reframing.
rut in the road, that they're little
Yes.
neurological impulses that we have developed over years and years at this point. So you've got to be patient with yourself and not kick yourself when you get back into those old habits or patterns, and just say, "Oh, there it is again." Kind of get curious about it, make a game out of it. almost. But yeah, it is practice. That's why they call it a practice, right?
Yeah, yeah, I'm learning more and more about practice and also testing, trying something out new, see how
Yeah.
it does, you know?
So you can they used to say practice makes perfect, but really practice makes permanent.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Well, keeping an eye on the time, do you want to just mention a little bit about your course and give
Yeah.
folks a website to go to or a link so that they can follow up?
So I don't have a link yet because the course is I'm just in the middle of developing it, but I'm very excited about this. I'll be offering it towards the end of February, and it's going to be called How to Get Started on Your Passion Project When You're Not Ready.
I love that name. That is so good. I mean that's how my whole Feel So Alive Informed came around. Not ready, not on the list, not planned, no
Love it.
strategy. It was just I need to do this and so I'm going to do it now.
Yeah.
Anyway, watching the clock, we've gone over, but I appreciate this. This has been so fun.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so Yvonne, thank you, and we won't take up any more of your time.
It was so much fun. Thank you.
I thank you very much for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you here, whether it's live or on the replay. And please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below because we're always interested in feedback. And you can do that either on our Facebook page, which is Feel So Alive Marketing Group, that's the MKGP, and also that same label on YouTube, and I think I've got that set up correctly now. Every time there's always something a little new and a little different that I'm playing with, and so we're always hoping that everything works out great. Please keep an eye out for our next program, which is going to be on February 25th. It's the second and fourth Thursdays. And what I've done now is on our website, and I think I didn't add that link, sorry. On our website, we now have a calendar, so you can go to the calendar, you can click on the event that you want to attend, and there's an add to calendar button, so it'll be on your day timer or planner, so you don't have to worry about trying to set an alarm to not forget. And thank you very much for joining us, and we hope that you have a marvelous rest of your day. Take care, and please share your comments and thoughts, and share the love. Pass this on.